Wow, what can I say? It has been a real eventful, I want to say couple of months, but in reality, it's a couple of weeks here for Warcry. There have been a lot of leaks, there have been a lot of releases. We got a bunch of new warbands, we got a bunch of new stuff coming, we got new warbands coming next year, we got new warbands coming possibly even next month. We don't know yet. But this has led me to believe I've been taking a look at the release schedules and everything that's going on, and I think we've got a new errata coming, and I think it's going to come real soon. Today, we're going to put on our tinfoil hats, and I'm going to try and look into my crystal ball to see exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and we'll see if I'm right or not. It's quite possible that I'm just going crazy, and everything that I think is completely wrong. But before we talk about when this mythical errata is going to be coming and why it's going to be coming, if you want more videos like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to give me some more support, you can join me here on YouTube. All the buttons are down below. Or you can check out Patreon if you want to see some of my upcoming videos, what I'm working on, or even have a little bit of say into the kind of videos and the content I produce. Or alternatively, if that's not for you, you can go and you can check out Streamlabs and you can give me some support that way. But yes, without further ado, tinfoil hats a go, and let's get into it. Okay, so I think an FAQ or an errata or whatever is coming very soon, and this is my reasoning behind it. I've been looking at the 2023 release schedule. We had the FAQ back in January, we had Blood Hunt released February, Nightmare Quest released in May, FAQ number 3 in July, so 6 months after January. Then in the latter half of the year, July, we've got Crypt of Blood, and we had the Divine Blessings that were released in White Dwarf. In September, we had the Weird Hallow Bladeborn release. In October, we had Hunter and Hunted, the Monster Killers, and the Flame Seekers. And then also happened in October, this is last week this happened, over on the French Warhammer community website, they kind of let slip the new releases for Cities of Sigmar, what that would look like, along with a bunch of points updates, which we will be talking about in just a moment. And now in November, we've got the Black Talons, they've now got rules that have just been released, and we've got the Nevermaze Bladeborn that they have put out rules for. Now, of course, what else do we have coming? In the wintertime, according to Warcry's roadmap, we've got an Order and we've got a Death Warband coming out, so that'll be fairly exciting. That'll be somewhere between December and February. And then in the spring, we've got 2 new, as yet totally unknown warbands. So that's where we are. What I wanted to look at, and what I really wanted to bring your attention to, is the fact that in the latter half of the year, compared to the first half of the year where we were just getting one release every 3 months, they've released a lot of stuff. It's like 4 warbands, 8 Bladeborn, Cities of Sigmar, which is going to come out, which again we're going to talk about, Black Talons that released, like a lot of stuff has happened, which normally, if we were just following the usual Heart of Gur, Sundered Fate release schedule, we wouldn't see all of this stuff. So really, things have been increasing in speed massively, and to quote our good friends Dr. Herman,
we should witness a double event within 7 days.
So, what does this mean? We've been having faster rules releases. I've said already, 8 Bladeborn warbands in the last 2 months. We've had Weird Hallow, which had 4. We've had Nevermaze, which had another 4. And then something that the community has been calling for, but never really has come up, is basically releases at the same time of Age of Sigmar. And one of the most telling things that I think Games Workshop have kind of been listening to the community on that is the Black Talon release. I'm going to be doing a video on them a little bit later because they're actually quite interesting in terms of a warband, how they play, and their formation. But yeah, they've just been released, and they got rules for both Age of Sigmar and Warcry at the exact same time. Now, previously, we wouldn't have ever seen anything like this. So for me, that's one of the indicators that maybe Games Workshop has been listening, and that they do want to do more with Warcry in the future, and really try and sync it up to their Age of Sigmar releases, so that when one thing is released in one game, it's released in another game as well. It gives the community an excuse to go out and buy the box, regardless which game they play, and really help solidify Warcry as an entry point into Age of Sigmar. So you can go, you can buy your sets if you like it, and you want to buy more, and you want to play bigger battles. You move from Warcry rewrite Age of Sigmar, which I think kind of is the thing that we're going for with Kill Team and with Warcry. Kill Team has kind of evolved into its own game, but we do see a lot of overlap where the community really loves to buy into those units that they can't get elsewhere. Kill Team has just had the new Striking Scorpions in plastic, so all those Eldar players are going to go out and they're going to get those Striking Scorpions because that's what they've been wanting to use, and they hate Finecast because Finecast is terrible, or they don't want to use their metal models anymore. On top of this, we have the Cities of Sigmar points leaks. Thank you, Warhammer Community France, for putting this up. It has now been taken down, I found, as of this morning. Cities of Sigmar itself isn't actually supposed to be released properly until Saturday, I believe. So that's probably why the rules were taken down. But the more important thing for me is that if the Sigmar release is on Saturday and they have this ready to go, it means that, again, Games Workshop are looking to synchronize their Age of Sigmar releases with their Warcry rules releases and make sure they're both updated at the same time. Now, this is, again, a really good thing for the community. It's something I really vouch for, and yeah, I very much approve of it. But what happened in this document? Well, we got a whole bunch of points updates going from the old Cities of Sigmar to the new one. Now, it would have been very easy for Games Workshop just to go, okay, well, we already have these units, we already have the points cost for these units, so what we're going to do is we're going to just port them over and we're going to keep the points the same. That's not what they did. Specifically with the elf and the dwarf units, on the elf side of things, we've seen an almost across-the-board decrease in the points value of basic elven infantry by anywhere between 5 and 10 points, which is huge. It's exactly what they wanted. Here we can see the Dread Spear. We've got the old profile and the new profile. Profile's exactly the same, but a drop in 10 points. And suddenly, at 55 points, Dread Spears are looking quite interesting. 55 was way too much. It's really that movement 5, toughness 3, and 8 wounds, and a massive price tag to go with that because of that movement 5. That's really what was keeping them from being competitively viable in the first place. Now we've seen, okay, a points cut of 10, well, suddenly they become viable. And for me, that's something that's very interesting because you do see a lot of those elven factions really struggle because they are paying for overpointed fighters. Secondly, what happened with the elven heroes? They're down 20 points almost across the board. This makes them far more viable to take and really helps elves, Cities of Sigmar elves anyway, as a faction to be at least more playable and more competitive when we're talking about them versus other warbands that have been released more recently. On the dwarf side of things, you know, you've got that movement 3 stat line where because of Games Workshop's early pointing of movement 3 troops, they really overvalued that movement stat, which means that we see a lot of movement 3 troops like skeletons, Graveguard, the old dwarves, any similar kind of chaff units that were very much underpointed for what they brought to the battlefield because they were generally compensated in other ways for that movement 3. Now we've seen a 10 to 15 point increase in dwarven infantry. So that really means to me is that Games Workshop has been looking at their points values and saying, okay, this is what they're really worth. We've got over a year's worth of data now, so we can start to make these adjustments as to how these fighters actually play on the battlefield and how useful their stats actually are versus how useful we thought they would have been at the beginning of the game. So that's something that is pretty big for me. Just for you guys at home, I've got the Cities of Sigmar leaks here. Now, I do expect that with the proper release of Cities of Sigmar on Saturday, we're going to see this being published normally. We're going to see it in English, but if you want to see what's going on, a bunch of the stats have already been put up on Warcry. Again, here are all the abilities for the humans. They're in French because it was the French Warhammer Community website that updated them. So yeah, here are all your abilities. Here are all your stat lines. We've got some very good infantry for Cities of Sigmar humans themselves. We've got some very cheap heroes going on. I'm looking at you, Battle Priest down there, 65 points. Maybe a pretty good ally option for Order Warbands that maybe want to get a few extra models in. Here are the elves. Of course, we've got the elven abilities, and we can see here the sorceress, 125 points, the assassin, 165, down 20 points from 185, which is real good. So suddenly they become quite viable with that stat line. 5424 is not terrible at all. Going into the dwarves, we've got the dispossessed abilities. There are some very good dispossessed abilities when we come to take a look at them. Again, once Cities of Sigmar is released, I'll be checking them out. We'll be doing faction breakdowns for all of the factions themselves. We've got the dispossessed. We've got a couple of point shuffles with the heroes. Some have gone up a little bit, some have got down a little bit. But the main point here is that you can see the hammerers and the iron breakers. They are now 85 points apiece, which is a big increase from what they were before. So, when is the errata coming? Again, tinfoil hats on. One thing I want to point out is that Warhammer Fest 2023, Games Workshop said that they are aware that players want more content, and I think we've seen this going into the latter half of 2023, which is real good. The rumor, a big emphasis on the fact that it is just a rumor that I heard, is that Warcry is on a 1-year support schedule, meaning that we will get FAQs and erratas once a year, or maybe every 6 months. So that's what I've heard. This kind of lines up with the fact that FAQ2 was released in January, FAQ3 was released in July, which is exactly 6 months after the release of the first one. I wouldn't expect there to be another FAQ next July, because I think that's just pushing it out way too long. We've got these 4 new warbands coming between December and May, so I think this lends itself for a good time for a new FAQ to come in at January 2024. I don't think there's going to be a new Tome of Champions in the early half of 2024. I think it'll be released before the new Order, Death, and whatever warbands are going to come out between now and May. I think there are going to be big points updates for Movement 3 and Movement 5 to 6 infantry models, again mirroring what we've seen already in the Cities of Sigmar leaks. I think we are going to see Movement 5 and Movement 6 heroes go down in points. I think we're going to see Movement 3 chaff models go up in points, and I think we're going to see Movement 5 and Movement 6 basic infantry go down in points. Really to solidify that fact that Games Workshop seems to be aware now that whatever they were doing before with their Movement 3 fighters, they were making them way too cheap and they were way too good for what they brought to the battlefield, and their Movement 5 and Movement 6, just basic infantry, were too expensive, and they could really do with a points break to bring them more in line with the abilities and the strengths of the other fighters that are sitting at Movement 3 and Movement 4. I think in terms of new Bladeborn, Warhammer Underworlds is continuing with its seasons and its box sets where it releases 2 warbands at a time. It looks like every season is going to be somewhere in the region of 6 months for Warhammer Underworlds, and I think, yeah, they will. They've done it for the last season and they've done it for the season before, so I think at the end of that season, we're just going to get all of the rules for Bladeborn in White Dwarf. They did say that you've got the Warhammer Bunker system that they're running on. Their smaller games that aren't Age of Sigmar or Warhammer 40k. They will have periodic releases in White Dwarf, and I think once every 6 months for a big lump of 4 Bladeborn warbands, I think is appropriate for them. And I do think that with this Cities of Sigmar release, we are going to get Lizardman and Chaos updates. I just couldn't tell you when that would be. I'm hoping it's in the earlier part of the year than the latter. But then again, I think Games Workshop, instead of like reloading all of their content like they seem to have done this year, if they spread that out during the year, so once a month, maybe we have an update for one of these warbands, along with the new warbands, along with the new Bladeborn releases, that would be something really good for the community that we can all look forward to. So the bigger takeaway for this, TLDR, January 2024 is when I think we are going to have a new errata, and I think it's going to shake things up, and I'm really looking forward to it, if or when it comes. These are my thoughts. Tinfoil hat coming off now. Of course, this is all speculation, but that's what I think is coming, and that's when I think things will be coming for Warcry. Potentially, it's going to be a very exciting at least 6 months for us, so that's something that we can all look forward to. But yeah, aside from that, please let me know down in the comment section below what you think is coming, when you think it is coming, or if you just think I'm crazy and I'm just looking too far into things. But yes, as always, if you like what you see, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And in the meanwhile, I will continue bringing out more Warcry content for you. We got some interesting things coming going through to the end of the year. So yeah, I will see you then, and I will see you next time.